This is the Taklamakan Desert, a vast golden shifting sea of sand in northwest China, known to the locals as the Sea of Death. The Taklamakan spans roughly 337,600 square kilometers, the size of Germany, about 85% of which is mobile dunes. For centuries, this desert was a graveyard for explorers along the ancient Silk Road, swallowing caravans and dreams alike. Even today, temperatures soar above 40 degrees Celsius in summer and plummet below freezing in winter, while sandstorms rage with little warning. But the Taklamakan isn't just a natural wonder, it's a growing threat. Desertification, fueled by climate change and human activity, has been eating away at fertile lands in Xinjiang, endangering agriculture, infrastructure, and millions of lives. For China, a nation with ambitious economic and ecological goals, letting the desert spread unchecked was never an option. Thus began one of the most audacious environmental projects in history, the greening of the Taklamakan Desert. In 2024, Chinese media announced that this brutal landscape has at last been completely encircled by a 3,046-kilometer green belt. This achievement crowns a decades-long mobilization against desertification. A nationwide afforestation campaign launched in 1978 under the 3 North Shelter Belt, the Great Green Wall, which ultimately aims to plant some 35 million hectares of new forest by 2050. That belt is already the world's largest man-made forest and has pushed China's overall tree cover above 25% from around 10% in 1949. In Xinjiang province around the Taklamakan alone, forest cover has risen from about 1% to 5% over the past 40 years. The Great Green Wall of China is not a single forest or belt, but rather a vast, multi-decade national project designed to combat desertification across northern China. It stretches over 4,500 kilometers and targets several of the country's major deserts, including the expansive Gobi in the northeast and the Taklamakan Desert in Xinjiang to the west, along with smaller deserts like Badain Jaran and Tengger. While the overall project focuses heavily on stopping sandstorms from the Gobi Desert that threaten cities like Beijing, it also includes specific initiatives such as the 3,000-kilometer-long green belt encircling the Taklamakan. This Taklamakan belt is a critical part of the larger effort, aiming to shield the Tarim Basin's oases and farmland from encroaching dunes. In this way, both the Gobi and Taklamakan are directly addressed under the same national vision to turn desert margins into green shields. China's desert greening has gathered steam for decades. Before and after in Kakea, in 1986, crews leveled dunes. By 2023, the area was transformed into a lush poplar forest. Over the past 46 years, more than 30 million hectares of trees were planted nationwide under this program. Poplar forests on the desert's northern rim are now being rejuvenated by harnessing floodwaters, and new protective belts are planned along vulnerable western edges. Such continual maintenance is essential, since roughly 26.8% of China's land, despite gains, still remains classified as desertified. This entire struggle is about more than just the environment. The project supports China's Belt and Road Initiative, ensuring that critical infrastructure like the Hotan-Rokiang Railway, which crosses the Taklamakan, remains operational. By stabilizing the desert, China is securing its economic future in Xinjiang, a region rich in resources and strategic importance. Combating such an extreme desert required high-tech as well as old-fashioned hard work. Officials describe a mix of strategies tailored to local conditions. For example, Deng Xiaobo of Hotan's Forestry Bureau explains that 3 main methods are used. Biological sand control. In areas with some water and soil, teams plant drought-tolerant shrubs and trees as living windbreaks. Species like desert poplar, red willow, oleaster, and saxaul are carefully chosen to survive with minimal water. These plant belts hold drifting sand in place and even encourage soil crust to reform. Photovoltaic sand control. In more arid zones, vast solar panel farms serve double duty. They generate clean electricity and shade the ground, reducing wind speeds and sand erosion underneath. Engineers even design solar fields with raised panels so that the shaded soil can grow sparse vegetation beneath them. In addition, solar panels power pumps on the 436-kilometer Tarim Desert Highway corridor 86 photovoltaic pump stations now run water wells 24/7, replacing diesel and making that route China's first zero-carbon desert highway. Engineering sand control. In the harshest sectors, for example far from water and mountain runoff, crews build physical barriers, such as concrete walls, earthworks, stone checkerboards, and fenced trenches, to directly block or slow sand. These engineering solutions are labor and resource intensive, but can hold back dune advance in places too arid for plants. On the ground, these methods combine. Along the Tarim Highway, for example, a 70 to 78 meter wide planted strip now borders 436 kilometers of road. Every 4 kilometers, there is a well house, 108 of them in total. Each is cared for by a forest guardian couple who operate solar-powered drip irrigation networks, feeding about 200,000 trees. Smart valves and pressure gauges help them quickly detect leaks in thousands of kilometers of piping. Nearly 80,000 hectares were planted by 2020 in Aksu, near Kakeya, dramatically cutting dust storms. Satellite monitoring and scientific research also play a role. Experts use remote sensing to choose resilient plant species and adjust tactics. Experimental techniques have included adding soil amendments, reshaping terrain, and trialing local grass and forage crops. In the arid basin, groundwater is often brackish, so teams have even employed saline drip irrigation that can sustain certain shrubs. Studies show native shrubs plus cash crops can survive on this water. In short, the project blends ecology, remote sensing, renewable energy, and decades of field experience to turn sand into semi-rural green oases. Environmental measures also improved. In Kakeya, the number of dusty days plummeted from roughly 100 per year in 1980 to about 30 by 2022. A sharp decline attributable largely to the new forests and grasses. A similar story holds in other oases. Satellite data show the expansion of green patches that were formerly bare sand. Forest belts also protect critical infrastructure. For example, scientists note that after planting, shifting dunes no longer inundate railways or highways, greatly reducing maintenance costs. State media report that sandstorms in the north have generally become less frequent and severe over the past decade thanks to afforestation. One Chinese forestry scientist colorfully observed that the old picture of sand forcing humans to retreat has been reversed. Now, trees compel sand to recede. In fact, academic research finds a correlation. One Chinese study estimated that dust storm intensity dropped by about 82% from 1985 to 1999. A change largely attributed to the new vegetation cover. In summary, the Taklamakan greening has turned vast swaths of desert edge into semi-productive land. For example, the Tarim Highway belt now spans some 3,200 hectares and sequesters roughly 20,000 tons of CO2 per year. These numbers confirm that despite extreme aridity, human interventions have partially reversed desertification trends in this region. Yet, the project is not without debate. Critics of China's Great Green Wall caution that scale does not guarantee success. Many planted areas have been monocultures of poplar or willow, which can struggle in very harsh desert soil. Indeed, large die-offs have occurred. For instance, a disease once killed an estimated 1 billion poplars in northern China, undermining years of planting. Survival rates of seedlings are often low in the toughest spots, and some replanting is required every few years. As Reuters notes, critics say survival rates have often been low, and that sandstorms still routinely reach Beijing despite the greenbelt. A 2015 study even found that newly planted trees accounted for less than 3% of overall vegetation increase in the largest deserts of China. Factors like natural rainfall variability and grazing controls played a far bigger role. In some areas, desertification has continued unchecked. Water use is a major concern. Planting trees in hyper-arid lands can draw down limited aquifers. In parts of northern China, groundwater tables have fallen drastically where afforestation outpaced recharge. The region of Minqin became a cautionary tale. Precipitation, there was too low to support the new trees, and water levels dropped by as much as 19 meters in places. Ecologists also point out that stabilizing sand depends on the right plants. Drought-tolerant shrubs and grasses may be better long-term solutions than broadleaf trees that would not normally grow in a desert. In short, Critics urge that without careful species, selection, and sustainable water use, the Great Green Wall risks ecological imbalance and wasted resources. At the same time, many Chinese scientists and officials continue to endorse the project's overall vision. They argue that when done right, the benefits outweigh the costs: stabilized land, better air, and new livelihoods in barren regions. As Lu Qi of the Chinese Academy of Forestry put it, decades of trials show that diversified planting schemes can work in places like Kakea. Thus, the debate continues. The project's defenders cite hard-won green gains and new carbon sinks, while detractors highlight the limits of technology in the world's most arid conditions. Even after completion of the encircling green wall, work is far from done. China's forestry authorities emphasize that long-term maintenance and continued expansion will be needed. Officials vow to keep planting and irrigating so that no gaps reopen. In practice, this means replenishing trees killed by drought or pests, improving irrigation, and developing new techniques. It also means monitoring water tables and soil health to adapt strategies as the climate changes. The 3 North program is officially slated through 2050, and reports indicate that China will press on in collaboration with local communities and scientists. Globally, China is exporting its lessons. Chinese officials report working with African, Middle Eastern, and Central Asian partners on desert fighting projects, aiming to make more countries greener. Indeed, parallels are drawn between China's Green Belt and Africa's Great Green Wall initiative. The idea is that wherever possible, afforestation can help reclaim degraded lands. However, the controversies seen in China also serve as a warning that one-size-fits-all approaches won't work everywhere. Future efforts will likely focus more on tailored ecosystems, mixing shrubs, grasses, and trees, rather than massive monocultures. In sum, China's greening of the Taklamakan has been an unprecedented experiment. It has demonstrably added forest, improved local microclimates, and provided carbon sinks, but at high cost and effort. The project's legacy will depend on how well China and its partners learn from both the triumphs and the mistakes. A giant sand desert has been pushed back by one of history's grandest land restoration schemes. Yet scientists stress that true sustainability requires as much wisdom as wealth. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.